Hello, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG, and welcome to Instant Deck Techs. In this series, we go over everything you need to build a certain commander. We'll go over the strategies and the types of cards needed you need to get the deck working. Any cards we mention will be down in the description below. In this video, we're going to be looking at Jodah the Unifier. It is a Wooburg for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard. It has legendary creatures you control get +X/X, where X is the number of legendary creatures that you control. As well as, whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, Jodah basically gives all of our legendary spells Cascade, which is fantastic. With Jodah out, whenever we cast a legendary spell, we get to flip through our deck until we find another one with a lesser mana cost. Cascade is a lot of fun in Commander, so in this video we're going to be fully maximising that ability to create an unbeatable board state that we can smush our opponents with. What's nice with Jodah is that the more legendary creatures that we have out, the bigger they all get. So this also works really nicely with that Cascade ability, as one legendary will go find another one. That unsurprisingly means this deck is going to be absolutely chock-a-block full of legendary spells, so do keep an eye out for them all throughout this video. One thing to mention before we kick off is that 5 colour mana bases can obviously be quite expensive. If you're looking to put this together on a bit of a budget, I'd highly recommend looking at running Jegantha the Wellspring as a companion. It has the drawback of only letting us play spells with single coloured pips in their mana cost. The flip side of that, however, is that Jegantha actually lets us cast our spells and our commander, and means our budget will just go a lot further. Either way, I would generally try and focus the deck into a couple of colours and then splash out from there. First up, we're going to look to run some cards that can really take that legendary Cascade ability to the next level. This section is really there to break a game of Commander. First up is Maelstrom Nexus. This gives the first spell we cast in a turn Cascade, so if you have this out with Jodah, it means that we get to do both of them if we cast a legendary spell. While Maelstrom Nexus hits any spell that costs cheaper, not specifically legendaries, we'll still have so many good cards in the deck that this is sure to do some stupid things. Then after that, we have Yidris Maelstrom Wielder, which if it deals combat damage in a turn, gives every spell we cast from then on in that turn Cascade. This means we can flip even more cards from our deck into play. And then for some double Cascade in a can, we have Maelstrom Wanderer. The fact this also gives our whole board haste is fantastic, as it means we can swing in straight away with everything that we've just cheated into play. Next up, we have some spells that can copy Jodah itself. With more Jodahs out, it means we're doing the legendary Cascade multiple times whenever we cast a legendary spell. Not to mention how much they'll buff our whole team as well. Another way to help us pop off is with Ramos Dragon Engine. Each time we cast a spell, or Cascade into a spell, we will put counters onto Ramos equal to that spell's colours. Then you only need to remove 5 counters from it to make double Wooburg mana. This will easily let us play out all the other lovely legendaries from our hand, which when we do, add counters back onto Ramos, ready for us to do again next turn. And then there's 2 cards that you can run, primarily if you're running Jegantha as a companion, and that's Fist of Suns and the original Jodah Archmage Eternal. These mean that no matter how much a big dumb legendary costs to cast, we can just tap Jegantha, and with one of these out, we know we can start that engine and get the train rolling. Next up, we have some cards that really care about legendaries, because basically a large portion of the deck will actually be them. First up, we have some legendary tutors. You have Time of Need, which gets a legendary creature and puts it into our hand. Then we have OG Captain Sisay, that can get any legendary card, including Planeswalkers. Then you have the newer Sisay Weatherlight Captain. This can get any legendary and put it straight into play. Remember, its power is going to be buffed by Jodah as well, so this should mean we can activate it for anything we want straight away. Then you have a card like Wrath Capishan, which gives all of our historic spells, including legendaries, flash. This combined with all the Cascade cards in our deck will mean that at any moment we could pop off and create an obscene board state, meaning our opponents will have to think twice before attacking us. Once we have that board state, we can look to run a card like Abiiltiy the Cursed, which pumps up all of our legendary creatures. This combined with the pump of Jodah will mean all of our legendaries will be scarily huge and ready to swing through. And then the one card that could be really silly with all the legendaries coming into play is Kadrik's Soulkindler. This lets us pay 1 generic mana every time a non-token legendary enters the battlefield. If we do, we get a copy of that creature for the turn that has haste. Just think of every legendary creature that we've mentioned so far and every one that we're going to mention, and then just think about getting another one for just 1 mana. Absolutely insane. Moving over to our ramp now, and not only because of being a 5 colour deck, but also because we're going to have a lot of expensive spell to cast, we need a hell of a lot of ramp. If I'm honest, I would start with at least 10 bits and go up from there. First up is our rampant growth effects. These go through our deck and bring a land out and into play. In a 5 colour deck like this, it is way more important to get the ones that can get non-basic lands. So you have things like Farseek, Nature's Law, 3 Visits, Wood Elves and Sky Shroud Claim. These all importantly don't say basic, so mean that you can go and get any lands that have multiple land types, so they can get things like shock lands, triomes, and some more budget options as well. After that, you have some mana dorks that can tap for mana of any colour. Of these, Bloom Tender and Feybarrow Elder are probably the best ones, as they can start tapping for more than 1 mana later in the game. There's also still plenty of budget options out there as well, such as Paradise Druid, that will still do a great job of both ramping and fixing us. Some more synergistic ramp now, with Honor-Worn Shaku and Relic of Legends. These let us tap our legendaries for mana, so we can cast even more of them. And then, because this is a 5-colour deck, and quality of life is very important, I would 100% be sleeving up a Chromatic Lantern. Letting all of our lands tap for mana of any colour is just so nice. Then one last card that I will admit is a little expensive to cast, and that's Chromatic Orrery. Like the Lantern, this also helps us fix all of our mana, while also tapping for 5 mana of any colour by itself. It also has the very nice ability to pay 5 mana to basically draw 5 cards. Bit pricey to buy, but if you have one, it'll be a really solid card in the 99. Moving over to our card draw, and like our ramp, we want to make sure we have a good base so that our deck is able to function. First up, we have some legendaries that draw us cards whenever we cast a legendary spell. Both Reki, the History of Kamigawa, and Joiro, Weatherlight Captain are fantastic in this deck. If we have Jodah out, they're basically drawing us 2 cards every time we cast a legendary spell, all but guaranteeing we keep our hand nice and full. Then we also have Tulane, Teller of Tales, which draws us a card and lets us put a land into play whenever we cast a creature spell. Importantly, this also triggers off of Jodah's ability as well, so again we could be drawing 2 cards and putting 2 lands into play every time we cast a legendary creature. Then we have cards like Garrett's Uprising, Temur Ascendancy, and Guardian Project. These draw us cards whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control. Garrett's Uprising and Temur Ascendancy both want the creatures to be above 4 power, but with Jodah out pumping our legendaries, this shouldn't be hard at all. After that, we have Vega the Watcher. With this, whenever we cast a spell off of either Jodah's ability or from Cascade, as they are cast from exile, we'll draw a card, again giving us a ton of value. And then we have some legendaries that just draw us cards. Toski draws us a card whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, and Prosper Tomebound gives us an extra card to play each turn from exile. Prosper also then can make us treasure, and not just from the card it gives us, but also from the cards that we cast off of Jodah's ability or from Cascade, because again they are being cast from exile. You can then use that treasure to put into something like Hero's Podium, which digs us into our deck equal to the amount of mana that we put into it to let us get a legendary creature out. Maybe not as efficient as some of the others, but this is a great budget option in a deck like this. Moving over to our interaction, as we're in 5 colours, we obviously have access to everything, but to make sure we can actually cast our spells, I would try and limit the amount of colours that you go for. White is probably the best place to start here, as it has access to some of the most efficient bits out there. Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile are just some of the best, and at only a single white to cast aren't too mana intensive at all. Then you have Generous Gift, which just answers absolutely everything, so its utility is really nice. And then we have a board wipe in Urza's Ruinous Blast. This importantly doesn't exile our legendary creatures, and we can also cast it off of Jodah's ability, which is a very cool interaction. Moving over to red, we have another answer that gets everything with Chaos Warp, and then an always solid and budget friendly Blasphemous Act. And then as a ton of our ramp is already going to be in green, running a Beast Within I think will be another good answer to a wide range of threats. If your mana is good enough, then you can start looking at splashing into black for some removal. There really is all of Magic history for you to go through, so play what works for you and your budget, but importantly, play cards that you definitely can cast. Time to move over to some protection, as it won't take too long for our opponents to realise just how strong Jodah is. First up is the tried and goes in most decks, Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. Classics for a reason, they'll do a great job at keeping Jodah around that little bit longer. And then we can also look at running some counter magic. Like the interaction, only go into blue if you think your mana base can support it. Fortunately though, these aren't spells you're planning on casting early, so are much easier to splash for. Next up is a little bit of recursion, so we can get some of our best things back from the graveyard. First up we have some legendary Matters cards, with Kethis the Hidden Hand, which lets us play legendaries from the graveyard. What's nice about this is that we are casting them, so they will trigger Jodah. Then you have something like Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, to bring every legendary back from our graveyard to the battlefield in one go. This could be a game-winning card by itself if the game is late enough. And then we have Tashar, Ancestor's Apostle, which works as a mini Sun Titan for legendary spells. Perfect to bring back some mana dorks or some cheap legendaries after the inevitable board wipe. To win the game, we're generally going to be turning our huge legendaries sideways, but let's quickly go over some dedicated ways that we can help that plan out. First up is General Ferrus Rockiric. So much of this deck is going to be multicoloured, and we're going to be casting so many spells, that the General is going to be making us an army of 4/4 beaters in no time at all. Next up we have Jetmir Nexus of Revels. Originally aimed at leading a tokens deck, in this it supercharges our legendaries, giving them Vigilance, Trample and Double Strike, all while buffing their power even higher. Or you can look to infuse your creatures with the power of Akroma, either with her will or with her memorial. Both of these are great cards and can really end a game of Commander very quickly. Then one last card for the Jegantha players out there, with Najeela the Blade Blossom. This Wooburg activated ability is fantastic. It gives our creatures a ton of game-ending abilities, and what's nice, if you have the mana, you can just do it again and again. Okay, rounding off the deck with some utility lands, I will be honest, we can't run too many in this deck as we are 5 colours. Of the ones you can look to run, Plaza of Heroes is the new hotness in Legendary Matters deck because it is just very good. It fixes for all of our colours and can also protect our commander or a key legendary. Tyrox Sanctum can also protect our board, but it does take a little bit of time to get going. And then we have the unpronounceable abiiltiy, the Cloudkeeper, which is a budget ancient tomb. This can help us get those big spells out all the quicker. The rest of your mana base will be very dependent on what you have available to you. We've recently released a video with some advice on building a deck with a budget mana base, which might be of help. Until next time, please like, share and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments if there are any commanders you'd like to see a deck tech on. Thank you very much for watching.